Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Hurricane Preparedness for the Home and Family. I'm Haskell Moore, and I'll be your host for today's episode. Today, we'll be talking about the predictions for the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season, as well as some improvements in the products from the National Hurricane Center. If you'd be interested in a free 1-hour Zoom webinar for your company, community group, your church, an HOA, or any organization, just drop me a note at haskell@hidefromthewind.com. Since 2005, I've had tens of thousands attend my in-person seminars and webinars from around the world. Be sure to visit hidefromthewind.com for much more information, tips, checklists, and recommended products. So the first question that everybody asks when you start talking about hurricane season are, what are the numbers for this year? Well, these are the predictions from the National Hurricane Center, from Colorado State University, and from AccuWeather, and you can see how they stack up against the 20-year average from 1991 to 2020. But my question is this: so what? What are you going to do differently based on these numbers, and should you prepare based on these predictions? So let's take a look at a couple of scenarios real quick. In 2010, it was expected to be a very active and devastating year, and the closest analog, or where the meteorological setup for that year was similar to this one, was 2005. And if you will recall, that was the year that brought us deadly hurricanes Rita and Katrina. However, not a single hurricane made landfall in the U.S. in 2010. 1983 was expected to be very quiet and very slow, and indeed it was. We only had 4 named storms, 3 hurricanes, and 1 major hurricane, but that major hurricane was Hurricane Alicia that came into the Houston-Galveston area, resulted in 17 deaths, over 3,000 injuries, and roughly $9 billion in damages adjusted for inflation. So remember, it only takes one storm to make it a bad hurricane season for you, and you should prepare accordingly. Assume every year could be the year that you get the big hurricane. Hurricane season starts ramping up on August 1st and runs through the end of October. Now, you can have hurricanes before and after this period of time, but this is typically when we get the most hurricanes. Also, the ENSO forecast is interesting to look at. That stands for El Niño Southern Oscillation. When we're in an El Niño state, it suppresses that Atlantic activity, and the upper wind shear over the Atlantic tends to disrupt storms formation and intensification. La Niña, on the other hand, enhances hurricane activity. There's less wind shear and more favorable conditions for the storms to develop and strengthen. There's also something called ENSO neutral, also referred to as La Nada, and that has mixed effects on storm development. And usually during this time, other factors are more prominent, such as the Atlantic sea surface temperatures or the Saharan dust. Now, looking at the most active period that I have outlined here, the August, September, October time frame, you can see that it looks like we're going to be about somewhere around 54% chance of being in an ENSO neutral. And it should be noted also that we've had some pretty bad hurricanes during ENSO neutral years. New from the National Hurricane Center this year are several improved products. The cone, for example, has been improved to where the accuracy is now 3 to 5% better than in years past. Also, then, in addition to the smaller cone, they'll be using an experimental cone that includes inland alerts and highlights the risk of dangerous winds even far from the storm's path. In the past, people would look at the cone and think, well, I'm not in the cone, there's no risk to me, I'm not going to prepare, not going to evacuate. So now the cone and the graphic includes areas that could be at risk and highlights the importance of preparing or getting ready for an evacuation. In a news conference on Thursday, May 29th, Ken Graham, director of the National Hurricane Center, announced improvements to the Hurricane Analysis and Forecasting System, also known as HAVS. For example, in 2024, the National Hurricane Center was able to issue a warning and publish a cone before Hurricane Helene was even a depression. Also, Cat 5 Hurricane Milton was forecasted to become a major hurricane 4 days before it made landfall. Now they can actually issue a cone before a storm even develops. Ken also pointed out that the strongest hurricanes are the ones that develop the fastest. Every Cat 5 storm to hit the U.S. was a tropical storm or less just 3 days prior. Also new this year, the National Hurricane Center is able to issue potential tropical cyclone advisories up to 72 hours in advance, as opposed to the current 48 hours that we see today. This has huge implications for evacuation and preparation. This photograph was taken in 2005 during the Hurricane Rita evacuation, and I can tell you from firsthand experience, having an extra day to spread that evacuation out a little bit further, or having a more accurate cone, would have played a significant role in either reducing or eliminating much of the evacuation activities that took place in the Houston, Galveston area. And by the way, over 100 people lost their lives during this evacuation. And speaking of hurricane preparedness, I'd like to tell you just real quickly about a great discount you can get on your Maglite flashlight by using discount code Hurricane10 at checkout on the Maglite.com website. You can get 10% off your entire order. I hope you found today's information useful and helpful. Please remember to like and subscribe and leave your questions in the comments section, or drop me a note at haskell@hidefromthewind.com and I'll get back with you as soon as possible. Thanks and stay safe.